cheers. Here's Siddle. Oh, the ball is close. He's given him. He's given him. Peter Siddle's got a hat-trick on his birthday.
Welcome back to the On the Ball podcast. Today is episode 62 of the show. I'm back by myself, actually. Felt another solo episode was, due. I enjoyed my last one, actually. Maybe a bit of me time there, but don't mind it. So today we're going to be previewing the Premier League season of 2020-21. So that's 2020 to 2021. I know that sounds confusing, but basically all I'm going to be doing is predicting the ladder. So we're just going to be running from 20 to first position, and I'm just going to say where my teams are. So there's going to be a few outrageous calls, I'm sure, but just allow it, alright? And yeah, really looking forward to the Premier League starting. Did our review episodes only the other week, so that kind of got me back into soccer, looking at all the stats and stuff, seeing the breakout players, so I'm really looking forward to this season. So we'll start from position 20 and we'll work our way up to number 1. So number 20, it's always tough to know where the promoted sides are going to come, because we haven't really seen like a form line in the Premier League, because obviously the Championship is a different league. Not that it's a bad league in any stretch of the imagination, but it's just hard to relate a past season's performance in the Championship to the Premier League. It's hard to know which players will dominate there and not in the Prem, and vice versa. So unfortunately last, I'm going to go with West Bromwich Albion. I can't lie, I think this team has gone up and down quite a bit in the last decade. For me, they're just not a team that strikes me as someone who's going to come up and just perform really well. I think they're going to be in the relegation battle no matter what, even if they do survive. But I've got them 20th. Currently, I'm recording this on the 11th of September, so deadline day is not till the 5th of October, so a lot of teams could change, and I'll probably do a transfer season review when deadline day strikes. We'll probably review each transfer window. But at the moment, West Brom haven't really gained or lost anyone of their starting XI of last season. So that's already a red flag. The promoted teams normally need to invest in a few good pickups who are ready to take on this Premier League level of footy. So last year they got promoted. They came second. They were in first I think the second half of the season for quite a bit, and then Leeds overtook them and won the Championship. But what struck me was in after lockdown, so in the 9 or 10 rounds after lockdown, they came 11th in the Championship, only winning 13 points. I think they had 3 draws and a loss in their last 4 rounds. So I think some of that might have been pressure, choking when the title was on the line, but that does, raise concerns over their form coming into this season, because that was only like a month ago, or a little bit more. I fear for West Brom unless they make some good signings in the next month. Next up, I've got another promoted team. I know it's a bit of a cop-out just relegating the promoted teams, but Fulham, I think we saw it 2 years ago when they came up. They looked really out of it. I think this time they'll make a better fist of it. Last time they spent really, really poorly. This year they haven't really spent much money either, like West Brom. I think because they did spend so much the other year. So I don't know what's going on. So they've got Jean-Michel Seri and Frank Zambo-Anguissa, I think his name is, or Jean-Frank Zambo-Anguissa or something. Both midfielders. They signed them last time they came into the Prem, loaned them out last season. Currently they're in the squad, but I don't know if they plan to loan them back out or transfer them away. They're not being predicted to start in the first game week for Fulham, albeit Anguissa had a very dominant season for Villarreal last season. So that's quite interesting that they're not predicted to play, so maybe they are intending on loaning them back out or selling them. And then apart from that, they've loaned in Areola, the PSG backup keeper, to be their backup because I know the Fulham goalkeeper was championship goalkeeper of the season last year. They've loaned in Mario Lemina from Southampton and Kenny Tete from Lyon. So nothing really major in terms of gains and losses for Fulham. They've not really lost anyone of note. So yeah, I've got them 19th. They came 6th in the after lockdown period of the season, which isn't bad, but it's probably not something that's going to get you excited for their season this year. And they did make it through the playoffs, coming 4th. So yeah, once again, I fear for Fulham and their survival hopes. Next, I think I've got a bit of a shock here because they have been in the Premier League for quite a while, but I've gone Crystal Palace. They came 14th last season. But the thing that really concerned me, in the post-lockdown period, they came 19th, only accumulating 4 points. And in terms of expected points, so this stat is done, so there's an expected goal stat done by a site or group called Understat, and it works out the expected goals of each shot taken in the match, and then it adds it up. And then at the end of the game, you get a pretty fair reflection of who should have won the game, who outperformed, like, who scored a great goal, who missed a sitter, stuff like that. And then they do that for every single game of the season and eventually accumulate the points that they should have technically earned if they didn't over or underperform. So obviously it's teams are always going to under and overperform, but it's a pretty good base layer of how good they actually performed. So last year they were 17th in the Premier League on expected points, and they were 19th similarly to their actual position in post-lockdown. So for me, that strikes a bit of fear in my heart for Crystal Palace's survival hopes. They have signed Eberici Eze. I honestly could be butchering that. It could be Ebereke, it could be Eze, it could be Ease. They pay 18 mil for him from QPR, young centre attacking midfielder. He made the championship team of the year. I think he's only 21, so pretty promising signing there. They also got Batshuayi on loan from Chelsea, who hopefully will displace Ayew as the striker, because I do like Batshuayi. So they're two pretty good signings, I reckon. But yeah, the rest of their side is exactly the same. I think they're quite old in a lot of positions. I think Zaha, they're still over-reliant on him, and eventually that's going to run out, and he's getting older now. Still believe they should have cashed in on him 2 years ago, but yeah, I think Crystal Palace might struggle a little bit this year, especially with a lot of the mid-table teams taking it the next step. Now in 17th, just missing the relegation zone. These guys probably from 16th to 18th, maybe even 15th to 18th. I think there's a few teams all in the mix for relegation. I've got Newcastle United. Similarly, they seriously overperformed last year. They came 13th on the table, but expected points actually had them last. So below Norwich, everything. Then they were quite a way below Norwich. I think they were 7 points below Norwich on expected goals. So it showed that they were just overperforming. They were scoring the very few chances that they were creating a game, maybe scoring a few worldies as well with low expected, predicted probabilities. And then post-lockdown, they weren't great either, which I think will be a good yardstick for this season because it was only so recent. So they were 15th in both expected points and actual points post-lockdown. So for me, I think Newcastle is going to struggle a bit this year. They signed Cal Wilson. Not a bad signing. He's probably going to do better than Joel Linton. Will definitely score more than he did this year, only scoring 2 goals or something. They got in Jamal Lewis from Norwich, who looked decent in a pretty poor defence of Norwich last year at left back. And they also signed Jeff Hendrick and Ryan Fraser on a free. Jeff Hendrick, I don't think he'll start, but Ryan Fraser probably could start. Maybe him on one wing, Saint Maxima on the other. And he, only like 18 months ago, he was being rumoured to go for about 50 mil at one point, when he was like the top assister in the Premier League. So that's a pretty good pickup considering it was for free. I think Bournemouth missed a trick there, letting him go for free. Their only losses are Lazaro and Willems. Both went back to their home clubs on loan, but I don't think they had too much impact during their loan spells anyway. So yeah, I've got Newcastle just escaping relegation, but it wouldn't shock me if they went down. but I don't mind their business so far. Next up, I've got West Ham, another team similarly who could be in a bit of a tussle for relegation, but the thing that makes me think they will be better this year, well, not better, I've got them 16th, they came 16th last year, is that I think their signings from last season, although they didn't smash it last year, I think they'll be better this year. I think Seb Haller and Pablo Fornals in particular will improve this year, and ultimately they will see West Ham finish above Palace and Newcastle. At the moment, their business, it's pretty, well, it's nothing really. They made Thomas Souček a permanent signing, but he played the second half of last year, a Czech CDM. And then Zabaleta and Carlos Sanchez both, they are now free agents, so I don't think they played that much last year anyway. So they performed exactly where they should have last year. They were expected points was in 16th. They came in 16th. So they've done no business. So I guess that's why I'm going for 16th again. But yeah, I could see why you could have them down in 18th. But I'm just hoping, well, I'm more hoping than predicting, but I think Fornals and Haller should be better this year. And I know they had a few injuries as well last year. And they were pretty decent post-lockdown. They came 10th. Into 15th, I've got the other claret, and well, there's 3 claret and blue sides, isn't there? But I've got Aston Villa. This is probably a shock. I think a lot of people will have them to be relegated, given how close they were last season. Last season, they were 17th, 14th post-lockdown, so not bad post-lockdown, and they were actually 7th on expected points post-lockdown, so they've done pretty well there. They were 18th in expected points, so technically they should have gone down probably, but they just pipped Watford. But I think they've done some really awesome business this year. I think last year their business was really bad. They did similar to Fulham the season before. They just got probably a little bit excited with the Premier League broadcast revenue money and just splashed it on players who they were probably overpaying for players. But this year they've been smart. They got Watkins from Brentford, the striker. He was the Championship Player of the Year last year. I think he scored 25 goals or something in a team that came third. And the Championship's been producing a lot of good talent recently. Ones that come to mind, in particular, James Maddison. We saw he went from the Championship straight into the Prem and smashed it. So it's becoming a pretty good producer of talent. And it's a pretty tough league, so it's usually pretty safe to get someone from there to take the step up because they're usually hardened in the Championship, ready to go for the Prem. So I like Ollie Watkins. Will be interesting to see how he goes. They did pay 31 mil, but we're not here to review transfers. And then they also got Matty Cash, who is a young right back from Nottingham Forest. He is really good as well. I think he only just narrowly missed out on the Championship Team of the Year. But yeah, he's a really exciting player. I know a lot of the Forest fans were disappointed to see him go, but kind of proud that he has taken the step into the Prem because he's a big talent. So for me, those 2 signings, and maybe similar to West Ham, that some of their signings last year might be better this year. I reckon they're going to come 15th, but I could definitely see them coming 18th. For me, 15th to 18th is very close. Next up, I've got probably another surprise. I've got Brighton. I was talking to my mate the other week, Noah Behrens, who's been on the show before. We were saying maybe Brighton could be relegation candidates this year. But looking at their business and their underlying stats of last season, I actually think they're going to be fine this year. I've got them in 14th. Last year they came 15th, and they were 12th post-lockdown, so they did pretty well there. And their expected points last year had them in 13th. So they were pretty safe from relegation in the end. In terms of business, they've got Joel Veltman from Ajax, a centre-back, Adam Lallana from Liverpool on a free, and they've got Ben White, who's probably an unknown to most Premier League fans, but he was a centre-back who was on loan at Leeds last year, a young English, I think he's 24 maybe. I went and watched Leeds. I was lucky enough to go to Arsenal Leeds in the FA Cup, and Ben White really stood out to me. I thought he was probably the best player on the pitch, to be honest. And he made the Championship Team of the Year, and I'm assuming they let Duffy go on loan to Celtic. And I looked at the predicted lineup for tomorrow night's clash or Monday night. I don't know when they're playing. and Veltman and Ben White are expected to be the centre back pairing, or trio. I don't know what formation they're going to play. Other losses, they lost Aaron Moy to China and Martin Montoya. So Montoya and Duffy, probably not big losses. Moy, you might witness, a bit of an impact from his departure, but I don't know. I think they've got enough creative players around to fill that void. Adam Lallana, he's not expected to start on the weekend, but I actually think Adam Lallana could be pretty decent for them this year. We've seen in the past if Liverpool let a few players go, seem like Ings is the perfect example. I'm not saying he's going to come out and be as good as Ings was. He's a bit older. But I think even in the short stints he had with Liverpool last season, in the big games, I think he still showed that he's got a lot of creative ability. He always has. So I think Lallana could be a nice little free signing for Brighton. So I've got them in 14th. 13th, I've got Burnley. Always a tough one to predict, really, because you look at their team on paper and you think they're relegation candidates, but they always somehow are mid-table. This is probably... So I've got 15th to 18th close, and then 14th, maybe they're in that pack as well, Brighton, but I think they're probably going to distance themselves a little bit. But then I think 13th to 9th is their own little category as well, so it's almost split up into divisions this Premier League season, I reckon. I've got Burnley dropping to 13th. They came 10th last year, exactly where their expected points had them, and then post-lockdown they came 9th, but their expected points had them in 16th post-lockdown. For me, nothing against Burnley. I just think the teams above them are better and have had better business. Burnley haven't really brought anyone in. They lost Jeff Hendrick on a free, and Aaron Lennon and Joe Hart. So not big losses by any stretch of the imagination. But I think 13th. And to be honest, I don't think Burnley fans will be too unhappy with that. 12th, I've got Sheffield United. I've got them similarly to Burnley, dropping 3 spots down from 9th to 12th. For me, there's probably not too much logic to this. Just once again, I think the teams above them are better than them. They came in expected points, they were 11th, so maybe overachieved a little bit. And then post-lockdown, they were 13th. So their magic probably did rub off after Christmas, and they probably got to the level where they should be at. But still a great side. I really like the tactics. They've got a great coach, and they've made some really interesting signings this year. They've brought in Ramsdale to replace Henderson, who's going back to Man United. Big job for him because I think Henderson was crucial to their success last year. And then they've also got Max Lowe and Jaden Bogley, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. They were 2 young English Derby fullbacks, and Derby, I remember I watched them when Frank Lampard was coaching, and their whole team was always pretty interesting, had nice young talent. So I think anyone coming from Derby, you should always watch out for. And then they've got Ethan Ampadu on loan from Chelsea. Young centre-back, can also play a bit of CDM. He's come from Leipzig, so that kind of shows the talent, the high regard they hold him in. So hopefully he puts in a shift. I like him. I remember when he debuted only at 16, he didn't look out of place. And then they've got Oliver Burke from West Brom. Oliver Burke's kind of someone who's always struggled to find a spot in the teams that he's gone to. But he's always been a very talented youngster, so we'll see if he can make a difference in the Sheffield side. Now, in 11th, you've probably noticed that I haven't mentioned them. The other promoted side, I've got Leeds. Leeds, they could come anywhere from relegated to top 6 this year. I've seen someone predict them in 6th. I've got a mate from my cricket club who is a Leeds fan, and he reckons they might not be as good as everyone expects, actually. So I've got them in 11th. They were promoted as champions of the championship. And then post-lockdown, they were also first. So they did not drop off at all. In terms of business, they've got Rodrigo from Valencia. A few of my brother and a few of his mates, they're predicting him to flop. To be honest, I could see it happening. A lot of the Spanish strikers struggle in the Premier League, but we'll see how that goes. And then they've got Robin Koch from Freiburg, who was... we did a preview on a Freiburg match the other month, and I was looking at their stats, and he was the clear standout in that side. And they came 7th or something, so he obviously had a clear impact. But yeah, excited to see how Bielsa goes, their coach. Think he's a tactical mastermind, probably top 10 manager in the world, despite being stuck in the championship for like 4 seasons or something. They do lose Ben White, who, as I said, went back to Brighton. I think that's a pretty big loss after he made the championship team this season last year. But yeah, I really like Leeds. They're very solid at the back. Got Calvin Phillips in the middle, very good general of play. And then they've got attacking, exciting forwards, Patrick Bamford, Rodrigo, Helder Costa. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. Then in 10th, I've got Southampton. I don't know with Southampton. It's a tough one. They came 11th last year, and you probably, just by following the league, you probably think they overperformed with Danny Ings like scoring every chance he had basically and stuff like that. But they were actually in expected points. They actually underperformed. They were meant to come 7th in expected points. They were 3rd post lockdown as well, so they finished strongly. That's probably the reason why I've ranked them above Sheffield and Burnley. They've gained Kyle Walker-Peters, who they had on in the second half of the season on loan, but they've got him on a permanent to replace Cedric, who's permanently gone to Arsenal. They also got a centre-back called Mohamed Salisu. In terms of losses, they loaned out Lamina, and obviously they got rid of Cedric on a permanent. And then the big one for me is they've lost Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who I think was pretty crucial to their midfield stability last year. They haven't signed anyone in that position, so I'm not too sure who's going to replace him. I was looking at their squad list. CDMs, they've got like, Oriol Romeo, who's like, I don't know, like 60 by now. So I think that's a pretty big loss to lose Højbjerg. He's always been a highly touted youngster, and this season is probably the best season he's had as a professional. So I think he was a key to their success. So that's probably what stops me putting them even higher. But it'll be interesting to see how they go and whether they actually truly did underperform last year or not. Next up, I've got Everton. I've got them coming 9th. I don't know if this is just getting on the hype train of their recent signings, but I'm sure anyone who's listening to this, or if you follow soccer, you know their signings. But if not, they've signed Alan from Napoli, who only recently, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, was being rumoured of fees of 60, 70 mil. Then they signed Decore, great, tall, big French CDM. James Rodriguez, surely everyone knows him. Absolute star, claim to fame was his performances for Colombia in the 2014 World Cup. To be truthful, since then he hasn't done too much. He's kind of struggled at Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, but we'll see how he goes here. I think he has been coached by Ancelotti before, so maybe they've got a connection or something. And at the moment, they've got John Joe Kenny back from his loan spell at Schalke, so who knows, he might help out. I don't know if he'll get loaned back out. In terms of losses, they've lost Schneiderlin, Leighton Baines retired, Sidibe went to Monaco, back off his loan, and then they got rid of Stecklenburg. They bought some other backup keeper, but that doesn't really matter, does it? They came 12th last year. Expected points, though, had them in 8th. They were 11th post-lockdown. Expected points had them 18th, so they were pretty lucky post-lockdown, but I like their business. And yeah, I think Everton are taking good strides in the right direction, so I've got them to come 9th at the moment. Next up, we've got Leicester City. I can't lie, I had Leicester a bit higher, but Lockie, my older brother, is an Arsenal fan, kind of convinced me to change my order, I'll be honest with you guys. So I've got Leicester in 8th. I did think Leicester had kind of emerged as a top 6 side for the near future, but just after looking at the other sides, I think they might slip down to 8th, but I don't know, they're such a good side. I love Brendan Rodgers as a manager. Really like their business. I like everything about Leicester, to be honest. Last year they were 5th with 62 points. They were expected to come 6th, so didn't really overperform much at all. Post-lockdown, though, was pretty worrying. They were pretty awful post-lockdown, I'll be honest. They were 16th post-lockdown, the whole Premier League. So that probably has led to me dropping them down to 8th. In terms of their business, they've lost Ben Chilwell, who I'm sure a lot of people will say that's a big loss, but they've replaced him with Castagna from Atalanta. But yeah, I'll be honest, I don't think Chilwell is actually that big of a loss. I think he although he's a great player, I think he's just a little bit overhyped because he's English, he's young. So I think that's why he had such a price tag and why there was such hype over him. And Atalanta are a great producer of talent in Italy, so I'd be excited about someone coming from Atalanta. So yeah, I've got Leicester in eighth. I don't know if that's controversial or not, but yeah. So seventh, I originally had Arsenal in eighth, but then my older brother, as I said, he convinced me to chuck them above Leicester, and I could see his points. Last year they were eighth, and there's not really anything to suggest they're going to be worse this year. So that's kind of the reasoning why I've bumped them up to seventh. They've signed Gabriel, a centre back from Lille, and Pablo Mari. I can't lie, as living in the same house as an Arsenal fan, I think Arsenal fans are getting a little bit too rowdy about these two. It's very rare, actually, that centre backs come in and are good successes, but these two guys, they're fairly young. They look promising, so we'll see how they go. Because I don't really know why Arsenal just don't. I know it's tough for Arsenal to attract players at the moment when they're not in Europe, but I think they still are kind of procrastinating on shoring up that defence. But hopefully these two do it for them. Cedric's now on a permanent, but that's probably not going to have too much impact. They got Willian on a free, which I think is not a bad deal. I think you're still playing pretty good standard of soccer last year, or football last year at Chelsea. And then they've got Saliba back on loan, back from loan, sorry. And El Neni, but I don't know. I doubt he'll stay. So their defence looks to be shored up. Saliba and Gabriel are predicted to start. And then Pablo Mari is probably the backup. But we'll see how they go. Saliba is still very young, and Gabriel himself is pretty young and coming from no offence to the French league, but it's a bit unpredictable sometimes with the products that come from the French league. So I've got Arsenal in seventh, but I really think from fifth to eighth, it's anyone's game. I think these four teams are all pretty tight. Sixth, I've got Tottenham. So this is a tough one because their underlying numbers from last year were really bad. So they finished in sixth, but they were expected to come 12th on expected points. Post-lockdown, they came fourth, and they were expected to be 11th. So they were overperforming. A lot of it could be down to Heung-min Son and his freakish goals. But, I don't know. I just think with the list they've got, if you look at it next to Arsenal's, if Arsenal finish above them, they've got some serious head scratch. They'll be doing some serious head scratching. No offense to Arsenal. They've got a very young list. It's promising, but at the moment, Tottenham should be comfortably finishing above Arsenal. They've got a lot of players who are worth a lot of money in their prime, so they should be doing better than Arsenal. And Arsenal have a young manager. Tottenham have brought in arguably one of the best in the world, Jose, which I seriously question that. I think if they finish anything below sixth, Jose should be sacked. Because this team is too good to be dwelling down here. They should be competing for Champions League at a minimum. So they've brought in Doherty. I don't know why it's called Doherty, to be honest, but maybe it's something because he's Irish. But the right back from Wolves, I think that's a pretty smart signing. He's always looked pretty good for Wolves. And as I mentioned, they've brought in Højbjerg from Southampton. He's actually predicted to start tomorrow night, which is quite a shock with the midfield talent they've got. I know Jose likes Winks and Dyer, and then they've got like Ndombele and Lo Celso, so I didn't think he'd be getting too much game time. But that's good for him if he's starting. Good to watch him play. And then they signed Joe Hart. I don't think he'll play. He'll just be a backup, or maybe even a third string, who knows. And then they've lost Walker Peters, but they didn't really play him last year anyway. And then they've lost Vertonghen and Vorm, so Hart's there to replace Vorm, I guess. But Vertonghen, bit of a big loss, but he kind of dropped his standard recently, and I think Davinson Sanchez and Alderweireld are definitely the go-to pair there for Tottenham. Next up, I've got Wolves coming in at fifth. Wolves, they came seventh last year. They were eighth in lockdown. Their expected points, though, had them in fifth for both of them. In terms of business, nothing too big of a note. They've lost Doherty, and they signed Fabio Silva, 18-year-old, for 40 mil. Apparently, he's an absolute wonder kid. I'll be honest, I haven't really seen anything of him. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets on the park. They've got some really exciting youngsters. They've got Ruben Vinagre and they've got Pedro Neto, who we watched at Anfield on our UK tour and on our UK trip over Christmas, and he was very exciting. Caused the Liverpool defence a lot of issues. So I guess João Moutinho, my older brother, when he was trying to convince me to put Arsenal fifth, that was one of his arguments, that João Moutinho was ageing, and I guess that's a fair point. But I think he's kind of someone like Santi Cazorla, who's just going to age like a fine wine and continue to produce impressive quality soccer or football. So yeah, I've got them in fifth. I just don't really see a reason why they can't come fifth, basically. I think they're probably more solid than Tottenham and Arsenal, to be honest. I know they don't have that, big caliber reputation like those two teams. But I think Wolves are the real deal. I don't think they're just going to have a few top 10 seasons and then drop out. I think they're seriously in this. They've got a great team. They're well run. They've got a good coach. So yeah, I like Wolves at fifth. All right, next up we've got the top four. As I keep mentioning, I think this is split up into divisions this year. And I think the gap between fourth and fifth will be pretty sizable. I think the four teams I just mentioned are a long way off these four. Fourth, I've got Manchester United. It's pretty bold. It was a real tough one between them and third place, which I'll get to in a second, but I've got them in fourth. They're going to be improved this year. They looked great at the end of last year. They were second post-lockdown, third overall. They were fourth unexpected, so basically performed how they should. This year, I don't know, I was looking it up before, and apparently Henderson might not actually start over De Gea, which is pretty surprising given Manchester United fans' hatred for De Gea, although I don't think it's deserved, to be honest. And Henderson is a great keeper. They signed Donny van de Beek, a creative midfielder. Chris Smalling is at the club at the moment, but apparently he's only a couple hours or days from signing with Roma permanently. And apparently Marcus Rojo has come back from loan, and he has impressed Solskjaer, which is quite surprising because he's getting on in age. And their only losses are Garlo. They loaned him out to China. So I can't lie, the Van de Beek signing's a bit peculiar, given the fact that they already have a overbalance in terms of attack versus defence in that midfield and forward setup. They're basically fitting in 5 attackers into a team, with Fernandes and Pogba preferring to attack than defend. But it'll be interesting to see how Van de Beek slots in there. They'll be playing Champions League footy this year, so I guess that's a bit more of an ask than Europa League footy. So a bit of creative depth is a good shout, especially with Lingard's regression last year. But yeah, Van de Beek looked really impressive for Ajax in the Champions League 2 seasons ago when they made their run. He was kind of the only one left behind at Ajax, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. And probably more interesting to see how Bruno Fernandes goes, to be honest, because we'll see if it was just a 6-month fluke or if he's really this good, because he lit it up. Third, I've got Chelsea. I think it's similar to Everton. It's easy to get caught up in the hype of the signings. So I was tempted to put United at third because I think it will take a while for the signings to assimilate into the concepts of Chelsea and stuff like that. And some of the signings, although they look great on paper, they're not necessarily huge improvements to the side. But I think it's pretty good business at the end of the day. And we're not looking at prices here. So they've added Havertz, Werner, Chilwell, Ziyech, Malang Sarr, Thiago Silva. They've got Bakayoko and Zappacosta in off loan at the moment. But we'll see if they get loaned out or get sold because they haven't played for Chelsea for like 2 seasons. They've lost Willian, Pedro and Batshuayi on loan. So Chelsea's going to be an interesting one this year. I'll be honest, if they stay in 4th position after a 220 million spree, I think questions have to be asked. So that's probably another reason why I've put them in 3rd, just because I think something has to improve with these signings. They're pretty good on paper. But as I said, I do think it will take a while for them to get into the setup. It's very rare. Well, it's not rare, but it's not like always that signings hit the ground running. And to chuck 6 into one squad, that's pretty severe. And 3 or 4 of them will be looking to start week in, week out. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go. I've got them just above United, but I wouldn't be shocked if United came 3rd because they did look very good at the end of last year. Second, so I think there might be a little bit of a gap between second and the third, to be honest, but I think third and fourth will be tight. Second, I've got Liverpool. It pains me to say it as a Liverpool fan myself, but when you look at the stats, it wasn't a fluke last year at all. Don't get me wrong, we well and truly deserved the Premier League. We were the best team all season. And, we almost broke records and stuff like that. But when you look at the underlying stats, Manchester City actually came above us in expected points, which is hard to say, and it was by a lot. It was by 12 points. So it was more, they didn't actually underperform that much. It was more us overperforming. So what that means is we were finishing chances that we probably shouldn't have, which is a good thing. I say that like it's a bad thing. Or we were, winning games where we had less shots than the opponent or less expected goals. We were less dominant, stuff like that. So I think we will come second. I think Manchester City will come first. I think the post-lockdown stage was a bit of a preview of that. Man City gathered 24 points. We only gathered 17th. We were 6th in that period. They were first. So I do think Man City will finish above Liverpool this year. Liverpool haven't really made any signings. They've signed Simicus, who's a backup left back. He's just going to be there to replace Robertson at the cup and stuff like that. We're not too sure what's happening with the loan players at the moment. Like, your Harry Wilsons, your Brewsters, your Marco Grujics are still at the club, but they'll probably be loaned out or sold. Our only losses are Lovren and Lallana. I think Lovren got sold actually, but Lallana was a free. So not too much change to the squad. So I guess you could say, well, with that logic, they should perform the exact same as last season. But I just think Man City will overrun it. On paper, Man City's a better team. And I think Liverpool the stars aligned last year and everyone was in the prime of their career playing perfect soccer and football. It pains me to say, but I do think Manchester City will get back into the winner's circle this season. In terms of Man City, they've added Nathan Ake and Ferran Torres. Neither, I think, really improves the team, despite dropping, 70 mil on it. They've lost David Silva, Claudio Bravo, Leroy Sano. So I guess you could say the squad's gotten worse, but they had such insane depth already. I don't think they really noticed those losses. Phil Foden's come onto the scene and smashed it. So he's probably David Silva's replacement. And then ever since they signed Mahrez, they never really needed Sane. So, for me, Manchester City will be the champions of the 2020-2021 Premier League season. But I do think it will be close. It's tough to predict. I'm sure I'll go none from 20 on these bad boys. But I've enjoyed this. Any other predictions I want to make? I'll just go one player. I reckon Marcus Rashford to win the Golden Boot. I reckon he'll score the most goals in a great attacking system at Manchester United. He's getting into the prime of his career, even though it feels like we've been watching him for 10 years. If he can stay healthy, I think he will put together a great season like he has in the last few. He actually underperformed his goal tally last season and he scored about 19. The only thing that hurts him is he doesn't take penalties like a lot of the other top scorer candidates do, because I think Fernandes takes them. But I think Rashford will have a stellar season. Thanks for listening. If you've joined me today, like and subscribe and rate and review and all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. But appreciate the listen more, to be honest. I've got to go do some study. I've got a fantasy Premier League draft tomorrow and I know absolutely nothing about the game. So wish me luck and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Enjoy the Premier League.